And she is appearing with, she says, over 100 Republican leaders in Pennsylvania, who she says come from a range of former Republican administrations, including the administration of former President Trump. And she's making the case that all of these leaders respect the oath of office, respect the rule of law in this country. She's bringing up former President Trump's actions, specifically on January 6th, as the attack on the Capitol was underway. She's talking about how Republicans and her campaign have more similarities than differences, saying that Republicans, specifically those disaffected Republicans, those never Trumper Republicans who may feel like their party has moved on without them, have more in common with her than they may think. And this is all part of her effort to reach out to those Republicans, to really throw everything the Harris campaign has at the wall, trying to make sure that all voters, including these Republicans, come out on Election Day, Garrett.
And does the campaign think it can make real inroads with Republicans who aren't voting for Trump? Like if you're going to vote for a Republican down ballot, not just if you used to be a Republican and you don't like Trump anymore?
They do. And this was an investment that we saw made even back when this was the still Biden campaign. Remember, they hired that Republican outreach director to lead this effort. And ever since then, we have seen the Harris campaign, ever since she took the torch from President Biden, lean into this. You saw her appear with former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney a couple of weeks ago, talking about what they have in common and what more they can build on as far as their similarities. Again, saying that they should put country before party. And you see the vice president, as well as her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, lean more into, outside of their comfort zone, sitting down with more conservative media outlets. Walz sitting down for 2 weekends in a row with Fox News. And Fox says that was at the insistence or the outreach of the the Harris campaign. And now tonight, we're going to see the vice president herself sit down for the first time with this interview with Fox News and anchor Brett Baer. So this is something that they hope is going to pay off with just a couple of weeks left. But it is a months-long effort that they see as definitely worth the energy and investments into this effort, Garrett.
Well, and if that's one end of the big tent, the other part is shoring up the base. We mentioned the Harris campaign working to mobilize the black vote, specifically among black men. Obviously, this is happening in real time. That Charlamagne the God interview was just yesterday. But is there any sense that the overtures the campaign is making are paying a return?
Well, I think it's still too early to tell, since we're just over the last week seeing really the campaign really lean into this effort. But we've seen in poll after poll the vice president struggle to meet President Biden's numbers where they were in 2020 with specifically this group. And that's why you see her doing this outreach when on Monday, when she was in Pennsylvania meeting with black business owners. And then, as you mentioned, yesterday in Detroit, sitting down with Charlamagne the God, talking on that radio show that is very popular with black listeners. And she's leaning on the help of these super surrogates, in this case, former President Obama, who the campaign sees as the perfect person to help deliver this message. And we're told from sources familiar that this is going to be a very personal effort for him up until Election Day. So the Harris campaign hoping that all of that put together will pay off on Election Day, Garrett.
All right, Allie Raffa for us at the White House. Allie, thank you. And Dasha, it was only a few weeks ago where Donald Trump was criticizing Kamala Harris for her perceived lack of interviews. Now we've not seen much of him outside of the more friendly conservative platforms. What is the Trump media strategy with the 3 weeks to go now? Is it just to keep him off of unfriendly airwaves?
Well, look, Garrett, right now, the campaign feels good. They feel like the indicators are pointing in the right direction. They feel like they just need to keep hammering the message, keep hammering the opponent. They've been watching the Harris media blitz and feel like she's created some openings for them to make those clips and to be critical of her. They've been playing that clip from The View where she says there's not a thing she would do differently than President Biden. They have been playing that at every rally that I've been to recently. Although I'll say today and yesterday, the massive early voting numbers in Georgia might be a good sign, and maybe a worrying sign for former President Trump, a good sign for Vice President Harris. But look, I will say he did do that Bloomberg News event, and he is doing a Univision town hall today. So they're letting him out there a little bit. The thing that they want to do right now is no harm, is no unforced errors, and try to stay to the message. And that's really what they're hoping to do, that discipline, which can be challenging with the former president in the last 3 weeks, Gary. Garrett.
Yeah, I mean, look, to that end, you talk about moments creating clips. There's this enemy from within moment that the former president keeps going back to defend. Are you picking up any concern among the campaign or among other Republicans that this is kind of him stepping on a rake or giving the vice president the kind of contrast she would like to make?
Yeah, the campaign doesn't want any headlines that aren't about the economy or immigration. You saw him even at the town hall with women on Fox News yesterday. So many of those answers, he was trying to bring it back to immigration. But then there are moments where he can't help himself, and he does say things like enemy from within. He doubled down on that in another recent interview, saying that people like Nancy Pelosi are evil and dangerous. Yeah, the allies don't love that. At the same time, some people in his campaign say, look, this is the time to really put pressure on the opponent to paint that bleak picture of what the country might look like if Vice President Harris does win. And so there's that split between his advisors, those who are like, yeah, let's be aggressive and Trump's going to be Trump and do it in his own way, and others that would wish he would just stick to the economy and immigration, Garrett.
Clearly not just sticking to anything here these last couple of days. Dasha Burns in Atlanta. Dasha, thank you. And Vaughn, you're in Arizona, where Trump is doing something that may seem a little bit unusual. He's talking about turning out his base, voting early, not on Election Day. What are you hearing?
Right. Number one, Garrett, I think to the point that you and Dasha were just making here is that sort of rhetoric appeals to a great many MAGA faithful to Donald Trump, and that is what galvanizes them to come out to the polls. And as you mentioned, this go around, Donald Trump is actually telling people to vote early. I want to let you hear from a couple folks, because we're here in Mojave County, which is, you could call MAGA country of Arizona. This is a place that 75% went for Donald Trump in 2020. And there is a belief that they can juice turnout even more in this Trump area to compensate for what may be a deficit in the likes of Maricopa County, which is the greater suburban area around Phoenix. I want to let you listen to a few of the folks who we talked to going to their early voting location about voting for the former president. Compare 2020 for Donald Trump here in Mojave County to 2024 from your eyes.
Overwhelming voter turnout. It's been great.
Why did you vote early this year?
Honestly, because Donald Trump told me to.
What a good answer.
He keeps saying it, and I've been thinking about it, and so here I am.
He's busy. Really is. He's in it for the power. I know that.
Oh, okay. We got to leave too.
And most of them are. So.
But you want him to have that power?
Him? Yeah. Yep, I do.
Robert, that last gentleman you heard from, he did not vote in 2020. He is one of those people who was a registered Republican, didn't vote in 2020, who they believe are going to make the difference this go around. The first woman you heard from, Jody, is one of what they say is a 600 volunteer grassroots network out here of folks who are identifying registered Republicans that didn't vote in 2020. And they are of the belief, and the way that they're persuading themselves and energizing themselves to get out there every day, Garrett, is to say that if they get 10% more registered Republicans to come out to the polls than did in 2020, they believe that would make up the difference to give Donald Trump the victory here in Arizona.
Right. They've got to find these people who are Trump supporters but not Trump voters and make them change hats. It's going to be an interesting search all across the country. And Vaughn, Hillyard, you're on top of it for us today. Thank you. And joining me now to break down some more of this is our NBC News chief political analyst, Chuck Todd. So, Chuck, as Harris is trying to appeal to everyone on the trail, our latest poll shows she may be getting bogged down by Joe Biden's record. Your column this week, you called his unpopularity the mood music of this election. How so?
Well, I mean, you can just look at our own polling, right? We also tested the term Bidenomics. It was super underwater. Democrats barely have a positive view of Bidenomics. Independents 2-1 against it. Overall, nearly 2-1 against it. When you look at his job approval rating, he's at his lowest disapproval that he's been at all year, 54%. Well, that's still a majority it's a larger majority. More people disapprove of Joe Biden's presidency than will collectively vote for the winner of this presidential election, Garrett, which means there are going to be people that Harris has to win over who don't like Joe Biden's presidency. Look, I think it all sort of conforms to what you're seeing, and I think in very much, Garrett, that what I was writing about, how the Harris campaign is campaigning, and frankly, what Trump is trying to do, sort of tells you where this electorate is. the electorate has shifted to the right in this country.
Yeah.
Okay. For the last 4 years, the Republican Party has re-registered, has done voter registration, has run circles around the Democratic Party on voter registration. They have upped the numbers. This is a different electorate. While the map may look the same, the country has shifted a point or two to the right. Well, what does that mean? It means Harris has to win a majority of independents and some of these Trump skeptical Republicans. So in theory, she's talking to the right group of voters. Now, the question is she saying what's necessary to then get them to do something they normally don't do, which is not vote for a Republican, right?
Right.
And I think that's the question. Has she broken from Biden enough? They know, you can see they know who their voter is that they have to get. But are they messaging to that voter correctly? And my argument is they're frankly a bit too bogged down by Biden and Biden's record, and they haven't found a better way to separate yet. Look, this is hard for many sitting vice presidents, but Al Gore broke harder than she did from Clinton. Hubert Humphrey broke harder from LBJ than she has. Both still ended up losing, but they lost by a nose hair. Okay, and I don't think she's broken enough yet from Biden.
Well, and Biden himself seemed to give her a little bit of permission almost yesterday. Let's listen to this.
Every president has to cut their own path. That's what I did. I was loyal to Barack Obama, but I cut my own path as president. That's what Kamala's going to do. She's been loyal so far, but she's going to cut her own path. Kamala will take the country in her own direction. And that's one of the most important differences in this election.
So what does cutting her own path look like, Chuck? Or what does it need to look like? I mean, I was struck by the fact that her opportunity agenda for black men included legalizing marijuana, which I didn't feel like got a lot of attention, but is definitely a policy break from Biden.
Yes, that's a policy break, but that's a policy break that sort of, it's not a, that isn't a big deal to the other voters she needs. And I think the voter she needs more is that center-right voter that doesn't like Trump, that would prefer, let's just say, something that's slightly more to the right than what the Democrats are offering.
But is Kamala
I think it's on immigration.
Is Kamala Harris going to be able to come out and credibly say, I'm with you now and I'm to the right of Joe Biden?
It depends on how she says it. So, for instance, on the border, I think she missed an opportunity 2 weeks ago. On one hand, she tried to virtue signal that she was going to be as tough on the border, that she wasn't going to let this policy go, and she tried to be a little tougher. She worded it wrong. She needs to acknowledge that the Biden administration didn't get it right. So there's a way here to play a little Clinton triangulation. It's a simple thing. Hey, we didn't get this policy right. Now we're finally getting it right, and I'm not going to let it go backwards. So then you take you sort of do a little mea culpa, but you sort of say, hey, he blew it. I'm not going to blow it.
To me,
when the buck stops with me. And then you let reporters know, wow, that's a big break. She has not done something enough where the public says, wow, now that's a break from Biden. By the way, you know who she could learn from? Joe Biden. That guy and his staff throws Barack Obama under the bus constantly, thinking, so I don't think they ought to worry about what Biden and his staff thinks if she does it.
I sort of wonder if it's a trap where the Trump campaign then immediately comes out and says, oh, well, if you were so influential,
what? Garrett, so what? That actually only helps them with that voter they're looking. They don't.
The enemy of their enemy.
That voter doesn't trust or like Donald Trump. So there's nothing, so that's not, in some ways, you want to do it enough where Trump does notice and then accidentally reinforces your message to that group of voters.
Chuck, in the 30 seconds or so we have left, DJ Donald from Monday night, is this the kind of thing that's going to be still a factor in voters' minds in 20 days or when they're voting right now?
The other part of when I say that people don't like Biden in this election, the other thing they didn't like about him was that he was aging and not all there. Anytime I think Donald Trump introduces the idea that, he's not as with it as he was the last time, or he's kind of getting odd, or I don't think that helps him. That stuff was hidden when Biden was his opponent. So, look, we have plenty of polling to prove that they didn't like the wanting to elect Biden as the oldest president we've ever elected. Well, now it's Donald Trump that's in position to be the oldest president we've ever elected. And in those moments, I think, allow Harris to bring up age, and that's his biggest negative.
Yeah, we'll see if they continue to add up over the next 20 days. Chuck Todd, thank you for that analysis.